Hello, everyone. It is Monday morning again at 8 a.m., and this is the Community Unlocked podcast. I am your host, Jamie Langscove, and this is my co-host, Laura Holmes.
Hello.
And we are so excited today to dig into professional organizations and paid communities with our special guest. But as always, we will start with current events. So, Laura, how was your weekend?
It was good, thank you. It was sport heavy on the kiddo front. I feel like that's always my answer, but that is always my weekends. Both my kiddos had basketball games on Saturday, and my 5-year-old daughter, it was her last game, and she made her first basket, which was the most heartwarming because she's a peanut. So she was the tiniest one out there in this kindergarten league, which as a
I
side
was
note,
going to say,
feels a
I
bit
am just
ridiculous.
imagining the 5-year-olds running around and trying to build chaos. They're like,
I know.
not chaos out of chaos.
It's actually surprisingly less chaotic. I was like, this is going to be a dumpster. Like, there's no way these little 5 and 6-year-olds can play basketball. I mean, soccer, sure, you're outside, there's grass, you're running, occasionally make contact with the ball. It feels like you're doing something. But basketball, like, there's dribbling and things you kind of can't naturally just stumble into. Anyway, it was a fantastic season. The kiddos had so much fun, but my daughter really wanted to make a basket, and she had kind of gotten really, I think, nervous in trying to do so. She had stopped trying for a little while, and then this last game, it's like she went for it. And she made one, and the elation in her face and the pure joy was just, I wish I could have bottled it up. And she ran all the way down the court. My husband was a coach on the team and just gave him the biggest hug. And it was the sweetest darn thing. So weekend highlight for sure. And let's see what else. Oh, I went to the studio I do pottery classes. I went to their Potter's Market, holiday market, which not that I
Okay.
need pottery, but I'm all for like let's support people making things. And so it was lovely. I mean, I went and there were so many people there. It was packed, so many people buying pottery, filled my heart, and it was good. So those are a couple, I guess, highlights that
What
are
a
out of the norm.
fulfilling weekend. Like, I was getting chills as you're telling me about this basket because, I was an athlete uh growing up and did varsity sports and everything. And so it's really hard to even explain, but also to replicate that feeling of achieving
Yes.
something like that. And so I can even just see it, her little face just being so excited and like those
Oh,
endorphins, man.
it was so cute. And her big brother, who was also there, but he was off playing with all the other older brothers, missed it. And so he was really upset that he didn't see it, but he gave
Oh
her a big hug
no.
too. Yeah, and the funny thing, she'd been talking all season. If she made a basket, she was going to do the Steph Curry night night because we're big Warrior fans in this house, and she didn't. And then later, it was like some light bulb went off. She's like, I forgot to do night night, and it was like, don't worry about it, girl. It's okay. You nailed it. But it was
Steph Curry has to
so
do
cute.
night night because he's so used to that feeling now that he has to
No.
come up with something new to celebrate. So
I
it's
know.
okay. It's okay.
Oh,
She went with it.
it was the sweetest. I mean, her body was just overcome with joy. It was so great. It was so great. But how was your weekend?
That's
What did you and the
amazing.
fam do?
My weekend was good. I have made the mistake of introducing the 5-year-old to Roblox, so now that
Oh, you
is her
mentioned that last
entire
week.
world.
Mm.
Um,
It happened
but we did.
fast. I
I'm
mean, I feel
sorry.
like sorry, I was interrupting you. That I was just saying that happened fast. Like I feel like you
Oh
introduced her
yeah.
last week. We were talking about this and it was a
So
new
here's the
thing then.
thing. I introduced her to it probably last year, and she
Sure,
was
sure,
too
sure.
young to really get it.
Yeah.
And now this year, she's just like, I don't even need to read. I know the green button means go, and I know like when we end this thing, I hit the blue button, and that's fine. And so she's like going through and navigating through all the games by
Wow.
herself, and like, Mom, let's try this game. I'm in this one. Come join me in this one. And I'm like, okay, that's super cute and amazing, but also we need to take a break because we have been playing this all day. So that was Sunday. Saturday, we actually went to our first cheer competition, and
Oh,
that
how'd
was
that
an
go?
experience. It was it was fun. We didn't make it to the early part of the day, so we actually missed all the varsity competition. So what we saw was our kid who's on JV and the rest of the JV teams, and then all the littles, all the little mini cheerleaders.
Love that.
I mean, talk about little people who have just more energy than their body can possibly contain.
That's why they're in cheer. They just get it bouncing everywhere.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I know exactly the kind of person you're going to be when you grow up, and that's amazing. Like, you're going to be the one who is like running the team, running the company, and telling people what's what. And I'm like, good for you. You go, girl.
Yes, I love it. And how did your daughter do? Like, now, was this her first competition or the first one you all went to?
Yeah, it's her
Both.
first competition.
Okay.
So it was interesting because it was all these different age groups and categories, but in her category, there was only her team and one other team. So it was like, you either get first or second.
Okay.
They got second. But but I was so proud of them because they did so much work in the weeks leading up to this. Now they've got their regular JV team in the season, and then they cut down for their competition team. And so the competition team has only been practicing together for a few weeks ahead of this.
Okay.
And they did a whole new routine. They had to do like a new cheer. So, most of them haven't been doing this their whole life the way some of these little ones are. And so a lot of them are not super into tumbling yet. They're not doing super intense stunting, but they just came together so much in the last few weeks that I was like, I don't even care that there was only 2 teams and you came in second. Like,
yeah. And did they have fun? Like, did they feel a sense of like accomplishment towards what they've been working on?
I think they did right up until they got to the judging. And they were like, well, we're at their school, so we lost because it was their school. And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
Like, you guys looked great. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. I think that's all you can say, right? Just be up.
Yeah. So that was fun. That was an experience. I don't actually know if or when there will be more for JV, but it gave her a taste. And I think she's gotten that competitive spirit built up now. So she definitely, I think, is going to pursue that going forward. So,
and then that is really fun. And I'm glad she enjoyed. I mean, that's the most important part, right? That they had fun, that it was, a valuable experience for them. What did your other daughters think watching? Did either of them get any sort of, I don't know, reaction or?
Well, the 14-year-old is not into that whole thing, and it was loud and overstimulating for her, but she wanted to stay to support her sister. So she actually, I took her out to the car to grab her headphones, and so she sat with her headphones and watched.
Yeah.
And so she got into it just from a critiquing, like judging perspective. She was like, oh, well, these people did this, but that team did that. And, these guys should have won. And yeah, so that was cool. And then I was actually surprised that the 5-year-old wasn't even seeing all the littles doing it. She was like,
no.
eh.
Yeah.
She actually started to like fall asleep on me. I was like, okay.
Well, hey, all you can do is kind of expose them to it. And it's great they were there supporting their sister.
Oh, yeah.
And but those, my sisters used to do dance competitions when they were younger. And
it reminded me a lot of a dance competition.
Yeah. And I just remember being completely overwhelmed, like the noise, just the pace of everything, the energy. Yeah. It's a lot. So good for them for sticking it out and being there for their sister.
Yeah. I could see the 5-year-old getting more into sports. She's going to be my athlete, I think, my like sports athlete. And then, Cheyenne is such a strong leader that I think Scouts has been so good for her. Cheer has been a surprise win for her. And Sarah is my artist, my writer and artist and my creative. So she's perfectly happy just lounging around at home.
Yeah. As am I. It's a great way to spend time.
I'm happy with that too.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad it sounds like it was a good weekend. So
Yeah, it
cheers to
was.
that. And are you feeling better? You weren't feeling so
I
amazing last week.
am. I
Okay.
am. I'm doing a lot better. I finally kicked that virus, I think. So thank
Oh,
you for
good.
asking.
Yeah, of course. And your family, everyone else is still doing okay too? Okay.
Yeah, I
Good.
think we finally got rid of it. Um, any current events in the world that we want to talk about?
Oh,
Anything
there are
going
so many
on?
events, but I don't know what we
Yeah.
we
I
choose
feel like
to.
we're coming to the end of the year and I am just so exhausted of everything being on fire all the time.
Yeah. I
It's
yeah,
it's a
it's
lot.
a lot. Well, I mean, I don't know where this originated from, but you hear the kind of the discussion around like as humans, we're not meant to observe or absorb or live through all of this. It really
Yeah.
is like too much. Um, so
It's
yeah.
a shared trauma, I think, and as social has become so much a part of how we interact with the world and we ingest information and all of that, it is ongoing, and it is an ongoing state of fight or flight where we are, I think, collectively probably experiencing higher levels of cortisol and just constant triggers of stress. Even when it's not imminent danger to us, it feels like danger
Mhm.
because we empathize with
Yeah.
people who are suffering and people who are, experiencing trauma and tragedy and violence and all of the things. So, I will say, since we talked last time, I believe Hanukkah has started. So happy Hanukkah
Yes,
to
I believe it has.
all of our Jewish listeners, and hoping that you are finding peace at this time of year, even though what's going on in Israel has been obviously traumatic for both the Jewish and the Palestinian communities, as well as everyone else, like we said, who is experiencing this by proxy, watching it happen and feeling helpless to do much about it. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Too.
hoping people are finding some peace and some light and warmth together going into the end of the year here.
Definitely.
On that light
I
note,
feel like our transitions, we always have some challenges with those at the end when we get into these
right?
heavier topics. I mean, it is
I
what it
mean,
is.
I feel like as someone who's putting a platform out there, I won't say someone who has a platform, but somebody who is doing work
Yeah.
to have a voice and have an audience. I feel like it's important that we talk about some of these things, and it doesn't always fit handily into the script that we don't have. Um,
Don't give away all our secrets, Jamie.
right? But I mean, it feels irresponsible to not at least acknowledge, things that are going on, and
Yeah.
I think we talked about this before, where it can feel really uncomfortable to bring up things that you're not a part of that community directly, or you don't feel like you have a right to talk about those things. So, like, we've talked about the Black community before, and right now there's so much going on with the Jewish and the Palestinian communities. Like,
Mhm.
we don't sit in those communities, but it feels irresponsible to not acknowledge out loud what's happening and say, I see you. I see your pain. It's not okay.
Yep.
This is the minimum of what I can do, right?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I always appreciate when you bring these things up, even though, like you said, they don't always feel like they fit in. It's important to acknowledge, and I joke about transitions, but it doesn't matter. The
Oh, no, you're
transitions
right.
don't
It's
matter.
completely
It's
awkward.
just, it's just, it is important to bring up, and I'm grateful that you do. With like you said, the platform you're building and we're building, and yeah, just saying those parts out loud is important.
Well, I think difficult conversations is something that every community manager has had to think about and handle. And with that, I want to bring on our guest. She is the head of community at Dreamers and Doers, which is this fabulous organization that I have joined this last quarter. Let's please welcome Nicole Hartwig Landau. to the proverbial virtual stage. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having
Hello.
me.
Welcome. We are super excited to have you. I would love if you would give a quick intro kind of to our audience of what a little bit of your background, kind of what brought you to Dreamers and Doers, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a joy. So I'm head of community for Dreamers and Doers today, and my background is I'm a two-time founder myself. So I got into actually it's incredibly full circle to be at Dreamers and Doers for the past few years, because 10 years ago when I was starting out on my own entrepreneurial journey, I started in consulting, I moved into scalable tech. I found Dreamers and Doers at the very beginning of that journey and was sort of an onlooker. I joined our free Facebook group and I found some business leads that way. And so it's very fun and full circle for me to be here as head of community now in this role, because I have this founder experience and this deep empathy and love for entrepreneurship and community building, experience doing community building. So yeah, it's wonderful to be in this role.
Thank you so much. And I have really found that the community is so surprisingly to me, so supportive and so actively engaged with each other. And I think a big credit to that, or I think that is a big credit to the onboarding experience that you've built. And that was one of the things that really stood out to me when I joined, was how robust and engaging the onboarding experience was. I think we see a lot of automated onboarding that's done poorly. That is sort of like, I need to get a thing out there, so I'll just dump it all into one message and it all gets sent out at once, right? So a couple of things I would like to know. One is, talk to me a little bit about um, the mental process that you went through trying to set up that onboarding journey, and like what were the important things that you wanted to accomplish with that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. And it's something that's so important to us. And I think that within any community, there's so much going on. It's your first opportunity to walk your new members through what's going on. And so I'm really, I'm just appreciative of you sharing that and excited that you feel that way. And I think that what you're seeing is a reflection of 10 years of being in operation as a community. I take very little credit for so much of what we have already done and created at Dreamers and Doers. It was only 2 years ago that I joined this organization, and so much was already there. And that's a testament to, first of all, just how long we've been around, and also how much we pay attention to the member experience and how much we really are. We say that we are member obsessed, and we sort of giggle internally when we say that, but we really are member obsessed. And that's the reflection of that, thinking through that feeling of being a new member. Being in a virtual community is so different than being in an in-person community. You don't get those little here and there run-in conversations in the hallway that you might in an in-person kind of community. You've got to create all of that virtually, and you have to create that really mindfully. So I think that really does come down to, there are so many communities out there now, which is beautiful and wonderful that we have platforms for this and we have places where we can all find our niche. But Geisha, the founder of Dreamers and Doers, started this 10 years ago when communities were, people scoffed at being a community. That wasn't a thing. It was barely monetizable, at that time when this was started. So we have all of these years of experience of members, of hundreds and hundreds of members. And trust me when I say that we've made mistakes and we've fallen on our face and we've learned lessons and have sort of emerged at this point with some really strong, I think, member experience points. And I think onboarding is one of them. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. And you mentioned monetization, so that's something I also wanted to dig into a little bit. I've watched as the community managers, the profession, has tried to put together some of these professional membership organizations. One that I've been involved with up until recently as a board member is the Community Consultants Collective. And we had gone through this whole process of exploring, what does membership look like? And how can we justify charging for membership with the right value adds? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, how when you think about the experience that you're building as a professional organization and as a PR hype group, how do you figure out which benefits to prioritize for your members? Because I think that if you bring together a group of professional women, there's a ton of groups out there like that, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you differentiate Dreamers and Doers and the value adds in the community versus some of those other groups?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that community is such an interesting business model. And it is only recently emerged as that, right? And so there's still a lot of conversation around it that is happening and still a lot of figuring out to do. But I think one really tangible example of the way that we think through that is that we launched PR Hype Machine a few years ago. So for those who don't know, Dreamers and Doers is a community and a PR Hype Machine for high achieving, incredible, extraordinary entrepreneurial women and leaders. And so we both offer community, what you think of traditionally as community, the ability to plug into, hundreds of other people who are on your level and interested in what you're interested in. But we also offer this really tangible value prop, to your point, of a PR Hype Machine, which essentially is our PR team, our editorial team, always in the background, working to create visibility opportunities for our members. And so that usually looks like traditional PR. You're getting featured in NASDAQ, you're getting featured in Forbes, you're in an article in Thrive Global. It can also mean those speaking opportunities, being a podcast guest, or being a guest blogger on someone's blog. And so that is a really, in comparison and almost in contrast to community, which as a value prop is like kind of an amorphous thing. PR is a very tangible offering. That is you get X number of opportunities. You have something to show for that's very tangible. And so that's one really, really clear example of a way that we built something into our value proposition that wasn't so sort of amorphous, because community is that way. And even though we all know that community is valuable, we've been communing for, ever since humans have been around. We all know that that's a valuable thing. But we also, especially as professional women, entrepreneurs, leaders, founders, investors, are also looking for, we have needs, right? We have needs in our businesses. And so I think what happened with PR Hype Machine was, and this is another sort of example of the way that we're just always watching this member experience and keeping a really close eye on what our members need, that we noticed that early stage founders, which make up a pretty large percentage of our membership community, were really struggling to get visibility opportunities. They were wanting to get featured in the media to build credibility for themselves as founders, and they were having a hard time, doing that. And so we built this entire system. We systematized and operationalized this entire side of the business that started as something really small and has now become what I describe as the second pillar of what we do, almost equal to the community aspect of what we do. And so, I think that I don't think that communities aren't valuable without other tangible offerings. And I think that designing community is so specific for the person that you're serving. I mean, any product is that way, but especially in community, you are gathering people who all have, you're sort of lucky in that way. Your people all have sort of a shared consideration set, a shared set of needs, and you can really design around those needs. And so that's an example of a way that we've done that in a really tangible way to sort of add to that kind of amorphous nature of a community.
I love that. And I love how you have brought together people with different focus areas, different professional strengths. And so one of my favorite things in the community right now is that you have this offers and asks element that actually plays a pretty substantial part of, I think, a lot of the interactions. Is like, you have these women who are building their own company. So they're very busy as it is, right? They're already time poor, and they're offering free or discounted services or products or whatever to the rest of the community very generously. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're working in a software or SaaS community, one of the struggles is, how do you get the people who have a lot of value, the experts, to put in their time and feel like that's a good use of their time? And it feels very natural going into Dreamers and Doers to say, you know what, I am here to show up for everybody else. And I think part of that has been the messaging that you and your team have put out around, this is a mutual support community. This is not someplace where you come here and you're not taking a course. You're not buying access to like pre-built stuff, resources, right? What you're doing is you are buying a spot in this exchange of ideas, of information, of services, of value that I think is so critical to that community magic. And I don't know, I mean, you mentioned you give a lot of credit to the people who came before, but I mean, are there elements of that you're particularly proud of that, you would want to highlight as something that has made the community really thrive while you've been there?
Absolutely. I really appreciate that perspective. And I love the word that you used, exchange. And I think that we put really enormous emphasis on our member curation. And what that means is we put an enormous amount of effort into who gets invited into the collective, into the community. And so I think that feeling that you feel when you're in, that there's a generosity happening, that there's an exchange happening, that there's a dialogue happening, there's a two-way street, is a reflection of the people who are in the community. Once you're in, you're in. You are free to do and say and act the way that that you want to. And so the sort of only control point that we have upstream of that is who is allowed in, and do they match the values that we think that are important about being in a community like this. And our entire team, our core team, we're all entrepreneurs, we're all founders, we all come from this background, and so we have this deep understanding of what we want too in that community feeling, in that atmosphere. And so I think that what you're talking about is just a testament of our member curation process, which is very human, by the way. We talk about this a lot internally as a team. It's not scientific. It's very gut-based. It's very, how do we feel like they are as a human? How do they show up for other people? And oftentimes, I mean, most often, we have members coming in who are reflecting that excitement to give back before they're even in the community. It's just a feeling that's there on their part before they're even in. And so that's what we're curating for people who are excited about that. Oftentimes that means, just by sort of specific pieces that you can pull out of someone's application, they're usually further along in their career, right? And we, I think as women, get sort of further along in our career, and we look back and we're like, who can I help back that's back there? Who can I help out who's upstream of me, who might need some support? Who can I share some wisdom with and share the times that I fell on my face, and right? And we want that. And so we're also curating for that feeling of just a willingness and a want to help other people. And that's not everybody, right? Not every single person on the planet is in a place in their career where they can be that way. But we do curate for that. And I think that's the beautiful byproduct of that you see, is that like you get in and it's just this energy of, how can I help you? And it's by the way, it's not about giving without boundaries, right? It's also about asking for what you need. And in the same breath, you will see people saying, I need help with this. And also, I can offer this. And I think that's the really beautiful exchange that happens.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think about hiring too, as you're cultivating a team, looking for those things. And this is a whole different tangent that I can soapbox on, but looking for those folks who bring that element of their personality and that element of their drivers, their incentives internally to perform and to give back and to help others, I think is so much more important than hiring for technical skills. And I don't just mean like coding skills. I mean, stuff you can learn. There are things you can learn, and there are things that are really hard to learn. And by the time you're at this age, it's really hard to learn new personality traits. It's a lot easier to learn skills. So as people are hiring, I hope they're also listening to you and hearing that this is what makes a community, whether it's as small as your team at work or if it's as big as Dreamers and Doers. This is what makes that community thrive, is coming with that mindset.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's hard to be ruthless about that, by the way, especially as a community. That's business model is to be a community.
Yeah.
Your membership is your revenue. And so it's tempting to want to bring anybody in who wants to be a part of it, because that's revenue for your business. But you have to put the experience, the importance of the experience over that. And I think that, and it's a perfect analogy too for building a team. You have to be able to say, maybe there's some more time and energy that goes into upskilling, but getting the right people on the bus kind of mentality.
Yeah. I wonder, you mentioned wanting to bring everybody in. Now, the membership is not cheap, right? And so how do you deal with people who probably are a positive add to the community, but who maybe can't afford to join?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, this past year, we implemented our first sponsorship opportunities within Dreamers and Doers for those who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we really built it in a way that was ultra thoughtful and took the time to do that because we wanted it to be correct and to feel like it fit within the community. And we're really proud of that. Of how many sponsorship applicants that we've had and folks who we've welcomed in who are on that. And so that has been a really wonderful addition, newer addition to the collective. And yes, it's true that we do have people who want to join but aren't able to because they aren't ready to make that financial investment in their business. And I think that it's tough for us to navigate just as human beings. We want everybody to be, a part of this, right? We're not just robots, right? We feel for that. And also we have to balance that with running a business, and we have to balance that with figuring out a way to how can we meet the needs of our members in a way that's sustainable for us so that we can keep the lights on and we can keep doing what we're doing. And that's always what it sort of comes back to. And so that sponsorship kind of sits in the middle of that. It's like, how can we create that and have our large membership sort of supplement that so that people are able to join in that way. But ultimately, everybody who joins the community, whether they're sponsorship or not, has that same value system and has that same level of ambition in their career and just being extraordinary and are doing incredible work. And oftentimes those folks who come in on sponsorships are doing the most amazing work. They're out there doing, they're building the most incredible nonprofits. They're serving the world in such a beautiful, important way. And that's part of what we look for in those sponsorship applications, are those people who are giving so selflessly and making the world such a better place. And those are people that we want to be around.
I love that. Laura, I see you scribbling notes over there. Did you want to chime in on anything?
Oh, thank you. Well, no, I just love this whole conversation. Nicole, it's so nice to meet you. And I love what y'all are doing out in the world, because there are so many women trying to do amazing things. And if there are spaces where women can support each other in doing that, I just think that's fantastic. The thing that struck me in the conversation thus far has really been kind of how you describe the curation of the members. And Jamie, your comment about the hiring, as someone who's built teams in tech for a long time, that is incredibly important. And I feel like as an industry, and Jamie, your call to action, like listen to Nicole, I feel like unfortunately we're moving away from that, especially in such a saturated market where it's, tools, reading resumes and screening people out and leaving context and kind of the full human on the table because they didn't have a certain word in the resume or some arbitrary marker. And so, the things that my brain starts thinking is like, well, how do we more positively affect that change? How do we remind organizations, decision makers, to share this school of thought? Because it is so important. Again, in hiring teams, you can teach a skill, like you said, Jamie, but you can't unwind bringing someone in who's disruptive to kind of the culture and the community you're trying to build on your team. That becomes very distracting and ultimately can be very costly in many ways. So anyway, I'm just like, how do we get people to listen to that? How do you get organizations to understand that, okay, you're trying to move fast, but at the cost of what? Or yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anyone has any insight, Nicole, or if you have any words of wisdom for people who are out there hiring and how you all think about this, even when it is hard.
Yeah, I think it is hard. And by the way,
Yeah.
it's time consuming. Like
Yeah,
I was
it is.
saying that, it does take time for human beings to sort through applications, if we're just being really tactical about this. I think one thing that I loved when I joined this company is how the way that we approach things in such a human way across the board. And it's rare to find organizations like that. And so I was hyper aware of that when I joined this team, that how important that was. And I think that just leading by example, I think is really important in this way. And in fact, when we welcome new members into the community, and I'll just speak to this, from a community level, we talk about our member curation process, and we talk about how it's human, and we say, there aren't specific parameters, and sometimes we go back and forth and say, should there be more specific parameters? Should we be utilizing more tools for this? And we always go back to, no, just the good old-fashioned human way is the best, because look what it creates. And then when we have these kinds of conversations and Jamie says, this is what I feel, this is the feeling of the community, that's what makes it worth it. But I think when we talk about that, and we talk about the benefits of that on the other side, getting the right people in the bus, getting the right people in the space, that can be really inspiring to people. And also, while being realistic about what it means to do that, and what it means kind of on the back end of that, the time that it takes to do that, there's always that balance, right? Like, if you're going to spend more time on something, it's got to come from somewhere else. So it's balancing that with what's realistic in your organization. But I do think that just by speaking about it, and being a little bit of a contrarian, like, not everything has to be efficiency. How fast can we get this done? How it can be, hey, we actually really like the slow way of doing this because it feels good for us as human beings, and this is how we want to run our company, and this is the kind of community we want to be in.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it speaks to me of kind of like the long tail, or I want to say long game, because it's not a game, but though, when you're so intentional upfront and being very thoughtful about who's coming in, those people are going to stick around, right? So you're going to have a more stable base of members. They're going to suggest it to their friends. There is going to be a more natural way that community grows and sustains itself, because you've put in that upfront work. And again, going back to teams, it's the same way. You're going to have people who want to be on that team. You're not going to have people who are leaving because they're dissatisfied and then talk about the cost of having to rehire, right? Like, there's a longer, there's just more time, that you get when you are intentional upfront versus trying to be hyper efficient. And I feel like that's maybe where companies fall short. It's like, we have this immediate task in front of us. We have to fill these seats. We fill the seats. We're not necessarily thinking 2, 3, 5 years down the road. And I feel like they would be so benefited by bringing that thought process a little, farther into the journey. But anyway, well, I love what
And
y'all
let's
are
be honest,
doing.
that's why we're in this layoff situation right now, right? Is
Right.
because these companies were not thinking about the long view.
Yeah, they weren't. It's a lot of short-sighted decisions. I mean, I don't sit at the, in the boardroom or on the, executive leadership teams, but it from this seat feels just very short-sighted decisions that were based off of some, short-sighted decisions that happened before. So it's unfortunate.
I'm going to be a little contrarian, and I'm going
Let's
to
do
ask
it.
you. So, let's bring in the drama a little bit. So there was a whole big blow up with Chief earlier this year, I think, and it's one of the reasons Dreamers and Doers actually came onto my radar, was watching that whole mess play out, where for those who aren't aware, there was a lot of accusations of racism and discrimination happening in their member onboarding or member acceptance process. And Dreamers and Doers came up as a more equitable alternative to a network like Chief. Hearing you talk about this very human process, and we're kind of intentionally not having really strict criteria around member qualifications, if you will, or qualities. How do you counteract bias in that process without a strict sort of rubric of what you're looking for?
Yeah, Absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. And there are so many things to talk about all of that and everything that sort of brought to light. One of those is that we sort of, even before the member curation process, our intention was never rapid scaling. And a lot of, I think, the issues that came to light at Chief in those situations, and in many other situations in many other industries, we've seen this over and over again, is how much rapid scaling can suck the humanity out of an entire business and experience. And everything is sort of downstream of that. And so I think that's one just really important thing to name and to mention, is that we've always wanted from the beginning to grow sustainably, both for ourselves in the way that we want to run this company, and for the member experience, and for the team and for everybody who's involved, all stakeholders who are involved in Dreamers and Doers. And so, and there is a sacrifice to that. We don't have 20,000 members, right? There isn't that sort of the benefits that happen when you scale rapidly. But what we chose was the slower, sustainable route, so that we can be responsive, so that we can be ultra agile, so that we can be super flexible, so that we can change the way that we curate our members in a day, because we're a small team of caring human beings, and we can read something, we can read a new study, we can read something in the news, we can have a conversation as a team and say, let's edit this. Let's try something new. Let's experiment. And we do that every day. Every day. We're very big on experimenting, on always trying to, we just think about it as optimizing. And so I think that part is important to name. Specifically when you're talking about bias in the decision-making process, I think that's another great example of why getting the right people on the bus is so important, and why curating a really diverse team on our end has been so important to that process. Because we can do our best to be aware of our biases. We can do our best to always be learning and always be getting better. And also we need to be in active conversation with people with different perspectives than our own. And we have to be building teams of people that don't look like us and don't come from our backgrounds. And so that's something that's really important to us at Dreamers and Doers, that people in not just in specific parts of the hierarchy of the org chart, but all over the org chart, are coming with different perspectives from different walks of life. And so that's something that's been really important. And that's a way that we have built in, a way that we've built into the process, trying to be more thoughtful in that process, just by nature of who we are and who the membership committee is.
Oh, Jamie. Oh.
Hi.
I was like, I think she's talking, and then I was like, oh no, she's talking.
I was saying that's really great, and that I think we see a lot of problems with folks who don't consciously bake into their leadership group or their guiding committee, or whoever is influencing decisions, a very active interest in having a diverse group. Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on in the AI community right now with Sam Altman and the board there. And, I think they just ousted the last 2 women on the board. And it's like, okay, these are the people who are building the future of AI. And we are not in the room. And that is a problem. And so that's, terrifying, but not to go down another rabbit hole. It's really good to hear that your group has been doing this consciously and not by accident, which I think is sometimes what it's left to, or the whole concept of, well, the best people will rise to the top. Like, okay, let's not be ignorant of the fact that there are a lot of factors keeping some of the best people out of the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I want to ask we'll switch gears a little bit and ask a little bit about your tooling. So you have such a great experience. I know you guys I believe you're using Circle for the platform. What other tools would you say are critical for either a membership community or just a community builder in general to know about, to implement in their day-to-day work?
Yeah, that's a great question. We use so many tools. We have a lot of tools in our tool belt. We use a lot of different platforms to help what we do. And again, we are a completely virtual community, right? So everything happens virtually. I think that if Circle is the number one, and Circle is the community platform that we use, it's the private white label platform. I love Circle. We are fans of Circle. It's beautiful to use a product that's intentionally designed for the exact purpose that you need it for. So that's been really wonderful. We migrated over from Facebook several years ago and never looked back. So it's been wonderful for us to be on Circle. If that's like platform number one, most important, I think that, I mean, there are so many that sort of happen in the background. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize how much work goes into building and managing a community, and how much of an around the clock job that it is to keep a dynamic, living, breathing space dynamic and living and breathing. And so so much of what we do is communicate with our members. And so Missive is a platform that comes to mind as something that we use constantly. We live and breathe Missive at Dreamers and Doers. It's one of the best ways that we have found to serve our members and be able to collaborate as a team in that member support role. So Missive is wonderful. We live in Asana. That's our project management tool. Everything is there. In fact, some of the things that we have, some of the data sets that we've had living in Airtable for a long time are currently being migrated over into Asana because of the efficiency of having everything in one place. The effort that we've taken in the past year or two to migrate everything over into Asana has just paid us back tenfold in efficiency. All of our events live there. We put a lot of programming with our community. And so events living there, tasks living there. I think it's also important to name that we are a totally remote, very disparate team. So we're all over the country and the world. So being able to collaborate in a way that's asynchronous via Asana has been really important for us. We also communicate synchronously via Slack, of course, but having our home base and our heart and soul sort of back end ops be in Asana has been really wonderful for us. And of course, all the other tools that that everybody uses. I mean, of course, there's a lot of graphic design that happens in Canva that goes into a community. These little sort of not sexy details and things that have to happen in the background, the graphics that get spun up, when you're a member at Dreamers and Doers and you get featured in NASDAQ, we create a graphic for you, a shareable graphic that can go out on LinkedIn, on your social. It's one extra little element that, someone in the background is doing that. Someone is building and creating that graphic. So we use so many. Those are just a few that come to mind that are probably like most top of mind and important to our day-to-day ops.
Tell me more about Missive. I'm not familiar with that one.
So Missive is great. Missive is an email tool. So it's a tool to send and receive emails. But what's interesting about Missive is that you can have conversation threads that are private to the public conversation, that thread that's happening. So if Jamie emails me and says I have a membership question, I can actually chat to my teammate Caitlin and say, hey Caitlin, Jamie has this question and I want to look into this, but could you answer this for me? She can write me back and then I can email you back and say I got the answer for you. But everything is right there visible. So rather than me sort of going over to Caitlin's office and saying, Jamie has this question and can you look her up on this platform? We're having that conversation right in the visible email thread that you sent. So we're all able to sort of see all those emails. It's a very visible email inbox for our whole team. So it makes it easy for us to collaborate together. Yeah.
Yeah. I live in Canva. I'm somebody who has some graphic design background, but Canva has become such an amazing tool. I created an entire birthday invite on my phone for my kid's birthday party when I was sitting there waiting for she was like, I don't know, 3 at the time, but I was waiting for her to fall asleep. So I'm sitting in her room in the rocking chair, just designing a birthday invite for my 15-year-old's birthday party. Who would have thought we would have been here?
We love Canva. We're all Canva fans.
I'm a huge Canva fan. Laura, sorry, it looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I actually wasn't, but I can think of something to say if you'd like me to.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I mean, talking about tools is really interesting. I mean, that's kind of my background is in SaaS and tools, and hearing what's being used in these communities is really is really interesting. It was more on the HR side of tools, so it's not exactly in this tool set, but the Asana space, the last team I managed was project managers. So uh, it's great to see that, those things show up in this space as well, right? That behind the scenes, to your point, there's a lot that goes into making the front end seem seamless and cohesive. And so just, I guess all that to say, I fully appreciate the amount of work you and your team are doing to make the front end experience feel, as smooth as it is, because it is a lot of work to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I want to call out one thing that you said though, and you spoke a lot about this, but just scaling with intention. I wrote it down as you were talking about it because it is something that I think a lot of teams they're stuck either on one end or the other of it. They're either on we do everything manually and we're so burnt out and overloaded and we can't do anything properly because we're stuck with all of these legacy workarounds that, just make it work, just fix it, right? And instead, I like to come in and help them figure out, like, this is what this tool can do for you that will make this so much easier. And then you have the other ones, like you were talking about, the ones who are at like hyperscale, where they are just knocking over buildings just to get to where they're going to instead of taking the road that already exists, right? So I think it really shows with, and I'm going to take us full circle back to onboarding. It shows with the intentionality that the onboarding process has and the regular communication. And it feels like a very curated experience, even though I know as a community builder that a lot of those things are automated. It doesn't feel like just an automated message that the system is spewing out, right? It reads like something that is very timely, very relevant. And I would say for all the community builders out there who are listening, this is the ideal state for your onboarding, right? You want it to feel like this is meant for me. It's a message for me. I'm being, actively welcomed into this space. I'm being guided through the things that I need to know and what I am expected to do as a part of this space. And I'm not just being dumped in there and then forgotten about, right? There's a lot of ongoing conversations that happen over time. And I think that one of the things that you're doing really well is just the trust building, not only between the community and the members, but between the members and each other by having very intentional steps that you expect new members to take. Like, yes, you should go ahead and introduce yourself, but also you should go find somebody else to comment or like their post. And you should join this onboarding session where we're just going to kind of walk you through all the things and get you familiar with each other and get you talking, right? And I think part of that is just building the muscle, teaching people like, this is the expected behavior. This is what we want to see when you're here. And this is how you can get the most out of this experience. I think you're doing exceptionally well. So
thank you. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much for coming on today. It has been such a pleasure to learn from you and to hear from you. Thank you as always, Laura, for being by my side on this journey.
Of course.
I think this is probably our last episode for this year. So thank you for closing out the year with us, Nicole. And I think we'll probably take a couple weeks off and then come back strong in the new year, maybe with a new day and time. Because Laura and I both have little ones that have to get off to school, and this is not an ideal time.
We just have to be extra urgent Monday mornings. Yes. My kids know. They're like, oh yeah, mom's got podcasts. So
yeah, I'm running up the stairs with my coffee, like, okay, put all the dogs out, close the cat in the bathroom. Nicole, a couple episodes ago, our new kitten unplugged my whole situation and booted me in the middle of the podcast.
That is so a cat to do.
Yes. And she thinks it's hilarious. She will come up and I'll be like, oh, you're being so sweet. And she's like, yeah, look at me.
You made it work. We were covered, and then she sat and hung out with us the rest of the
Yes, we
episode. It
did.
was very,
We did.
very cute.
We had lots of kitten cuddles that episode.
We
But
did.
anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Appreciate you all. Have a great holiday season, great end of year, and we will see you in January.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.